in our personal lives, sometimes in our professional lives. Sometimes, in those rare moments, it impacts us in both. I'm Dr. Darrin Peppard, and today I want to tell you a story about a time when two roads diverged in front of me, and I had a decision to make. I had to choose between that easy, well-traveled path and that difficult road. That road, ultimately, that I refer to as the road to awesome. Now, before I dive into that, I think there's some things that you probably should know about me or that you'd like to know. You're sitting there and you're wondering, who is this guy and why is he talking to us? Well, I'll tell you, I just completed 26 years in public education. During that time, I've been a classroom teacher. I was a head basketball coach and a head tennis coach. I was an assistant principal in 2 different roles. I was a high school principal. I was a superintendent. Not only that, I've done a whole lot of other roles. You see, early in my career, I also worked on the summer maintenance crew, on the summer grounds crew. I did summer painting. I taught summer school. At one point in time, for a short time, I was a custodian working in the evenings. Heck, I've even, this past year, had to run our nutrition services department for a period of time because our entire crew ended up in quarantine because of COVID. So I've seen a whole lot of different roles in education. Now, I'm actually on the private side of education, working to coach and grow leaders all across North America. And I'm excited about that role. But all those things, the thing you should know about me the most, and the place where I come from with the most passion and the most to talk with you about today, is that of a recovering high school principal. Yeah, you see, 4 years ago, I went from being a high school principal to not being a high school principal. Yes, I went on to be a superintendent, and that was a great role. But I'm going to tell you, this role right here, the greatest role of my life. No, not the high school principal. That's my daughter. So being a father, the greatest role of my life. But man, being able to be my daughter's high school principal, what an incredible experience. I've been recovering from that high school principal role now for about 4 years. And those of you who've been principals or are currently principals probably are getting a good laugh out of the fact that I say I'm still in recovery. The truth is, I'll always be in recovery from that role, but it's a positive recovery because it's one of the most special places and special roles that I've had during the course of my life. And now, 4 years removed from it, when I reflect on that time as a high school principal, the truth is, there's some things I really miss, and there's some things I really don't miss. So, as an example, I really miss the first day of school. We're getting ready to launch back into that first day of school right now. For many of you, it'll be the first time that your kids get to come back in the building. I think back to those times as a high school principal, and what I did every single day, not just the first day, was I was out on the other side of these doors. These are the front doors at the high school where I was principal. And I was greeting my students and I was greeting my staff every single morning. Rain, shine, snow, didn't matter. And I was actually in Southwest Wyoming, which meant most of the time it was snow, but I was out there anyway. And back to that first day of school. On that side of the doors, I'll tell you what, the students who came just charging up to the door on that first day of school. I mean, the truth is, your students are never more ready to learn than they are on day one. We've got to take advantage of that, right? It's so energetic. We have students who are coming back to school for the first time, and they just can't wait to be there to see their friends, to see their schedule and find out who's in my classes, to meet their teachers. Is my teacher going to see me for who I am this year? Is my teacher going to love me and treat me with respect? They can't wait to show off their new outfits. Heck, some of our kids have spent 3 weeks picking out the outfit. I mean, like right now, they're starting to pick out the outfit for your first day of school. They'll go back to the mall like 6 times, just trying to figure it out and get it all right. I know, that's what that one did. Other kids, though, they just can't wait to be there because this is the place, your school. That's where they are seen, they are heard, and they are loved the most. And that's why they can't wait to be there on that first day. Man, that energy is electric. On this side of the doorway, It's the same thing for teachers, right? All of our educators on the first day of school, they are never more ready to teach than they are on day one. I go back to my own experience as a classroom teacher. I taught both junior high and then high school. And I'll tell you what, I was the guy who at the end of July, like right about now, I would be going back in my classroom to start setting up. You see, my first principal had only one rule about getting our room set up for the summer, and that was to take everything off the walls. And I'm sure that was so the custodians could clean the walls or paint or whatever needed to happen. But I wanted to get back in there. I wanted to get everything set just right. Everything had to be perfect for day one. My lesson plans, I'm telling you what, folks, from a lesson plan perspective for me, I'll tell you, everything was perfect. Here's the anticipatory set, and here are the activities, and these are the strategies, and these are the moves, and these are my outcomes, and this is how I'm going to find out, with some formative assessment, and here's some informative assessment. And man, Madeline Bloom would have anointed me king with my lesson plans for that first week. Now, truth be told, by week 2, they kind of started becoming the weekly work of fiction. But man, that first week, whew, I was ready to teach. So if you think about that, your kids are never more ready learning, your teachers are never more ready to teach on day one. Man, folks, that's infectious energy. And I really miss that. I don't miss having to chase people down to remind them of an IEP meeting or a 504 meeting, or, catching someone in the lunchroom and saying, buddy, lunch duty, come on, let's go. I don't miss that. I'll tell you on this graduation, and again, as a high school principal, graduation, that's the culmination of all of this. But I did graduation a little different. You see, what I did, when it was time for the diplomas to be handed out, I exited stage right. And I went to the bottom of the steps just off of the stage, because I was fine with the board and the superintendent getting the diplomas to the students. I thought that was fine, because I wanted to be there to be that first hug, that first handshake, that first congratulations when they come off the stage. You see, that's their first steps into adulthood. Now they have that diploma in hand, and it's time to go set the world on fire. And I wanted to be there with them to celebrate that moment. I found out many years later from several parents that as important as that photo is of their student receiving their diploma, they felt just as special about the photo of me hugging their kid when they took their first steps into adulthood. I miss that. I don't miss high school dances. I'm not going to elaborate on that either. I don't miss high school dances. But I'll tell you the thing that I miss most about being a high school principal was just being with my kids and with my adults. This is the main entrance to the high school where I was the principal. And this is a long hallway. I'm actually going to talk about this hallway in a little while. But that entire hallway, and most of the building for that matter, was lined with benches. And that's where I would spend my time. I didn't spend time in my office. I wanted to be out in classrooms and out on the benches, because that's where I got to build relationships and have conversations. I got to learn things about kids and about adults, and they learned about me, things that forge relationships that will last a lifetime. And that's probably the thing I miss the most. You see, we get so caught up sometimes in education about the data, about the outcomes, about the strategies, and about all the different things, the what of what we need to do. And we lose sight about what it is we really do. You see, the truth is, we're in the people business. That's the outcome. Our product, it's people. We can't forget that. So as we begin to talk today about what now, what do we do next, this is something I want us to not lose sight of, because the what we do next is going to be all about people, or at least it should be. So the theme of this conference, what now? So I'm going to be honest with you, when I first saw this and first started thinking about what it is that I want to share from a Road to Awesome perspective about leadership and about what now, honestly, what I kept coming back to And probably what some of you have dealt with as leaders over the last 18 months is more, now what? I'm sure you had these experiences, right? Where you really felt like, okay, now I've got control of this. And then here came something else. And all you could say was, now what? I'll give you an example. About a year ago at this time, my entire leadership team in my district had been working to develop our return to learn plan. You see, we're in a rural school district in Colorado, and so we had the opportunity, because we were small, to be able to go back in person right off the bat. We put together our plan. We felt great about our plan. We communicated it to our community, to all of our stakeholders. Everybody knew where we were. And within 24 hours, at the state level, guidance had changed, requirements had changed, and our entire plan was out the window. And all I could say was, now what? And of course, as the year continued, there were more and more of those now what kind of moments. But what now is to take those now what moments and put them behind us. It's time for us to think about any day now. We're going to have leaders coming back into our districts. We're going to have teachers coming back into our schools, and we're going to have students coming back into our schools. So now what? What do we do as we transition out of this really challenging time and move into what could very, very well be a new era in education? I'm going to tell you this. Here's what we're going to focus on today. We are going to get your leadership on the road to awesome. That is what I think we should do now. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, unless you're somebody who has been following me for some time, you're like, okay, so what is this road to awesome? What is it, Darrin, that you're talking about? So I mentioned at the very beginning that two roads diverged in a wood. For me, there was a moment in time when it all shifted for me, when two roads diverged for me. And understanding the origin story of Road to Awesome will help set us up for the three things that I really think we need to be focused on as our what now. So I'm a first year assistant principal. Most of you have been there. Some of you are probably just there right now. And I'm fresh out of my master's degree. I've got that freshly printed master's degree right there in my hand. And I can't wait to go and be a servant leader. I ended up being an assistant principal at the very high school where I became principal. And my first role, I was in charge of discipline and attendance. Yep, even without being able to hear you, I just heard it. Every one of you, or most of you, just went, oh, yeah, it's a thankless job. It's a difficult job. This high school had just over 1,000 students at the time. And my first year, I had over 2,000 discipline referrals. Our average daily attendance is 84%. Folks, that's dreadful. On any metric, that is dreadful. That was the challenge sitting in my lap. Partway through the school year, we're sitting in a staff meeting, and it's a staff meeting that probably many of you have sat in. And I'll be honest with you, that's probably a staff meeting some of you still are going to have to sit in. I hope you don't, but we were trying to answer what we believed were the two most important questions in education. What are we going to do about hats? What are we going to do about cell phones? Yeah, that was the topic of our meeting. And because I was in charge of discipline and attendance, it was mine to facilitate. As we're working our way through all these different ideas, you've heard them all. Somewhere between, hey, Darrin, if we get those calculator holder thingies, you know, and put them on the wall, make kids put their cell phones in there, will that help? Somewhere between there and if you just smash one with a hammer, I think they'll get the message. Somebody raised their hand and they asked two questions. Two questions that, excuse me, two questions that at the surface level, they're common sense. But in reality, they represented this massive paradigm shift for us. Two questions that, asked in rapid fire succession, changed me as a human being, as a leader, as a father, as a husband. It just completely changed me. And not in that instant, but upon reflection, this is the moment where, for me, the road to awesome was born. Those two questions, why does it always have to be about what they do wrong? Why can't it be about what they do right? I stood there frozen. And as I looked around the room, I saw similar reactions to what mine were. Man, have we been doing it wrong this whole time? And there were other reactions around the room, you know, some people that maybe looked a little uncomfortable or unsure about what this person had said. But the truth is, many of us reflected inside, man, why does it have to be about what they do wrong? Why can't it be about what they do right? I mentioned I wanted to be a servant leader. When the year began, I went around and talked with my teachers and I asked, what is it you need from me in this role? This will give you an idea of what our culture was like. Some of the things I heard were things like, make them sit down and shut up. Remind them that I have the big desk and they have the little desk, and they should never forget that. Put the fear of God in them, Darrin.
I wonder
The worst one.
when I was driving and I saw something.
That's what I was just thinking of. Maybe that's the thing you saw.
I'm picking up some background there, Stephen. I don't know whose audio. But the worst one, somebody asked me, Darrin, do you know that song by Nazareth? Come on, you know the song. Hair of the Dog? Be that guy. Now, for those of you who are too young to know that song, I'll share with you the refrain. If you know it, feel free to say it with me. Now you're messing with a son of a bitch. That's who they wanted me to be. Gosh, and I'll tell you what, this is how toxic our culture was. I dove right in. I was all about it. I knew where to catch them when they were hiding, when they were skipping. I knew where to search when I knew they had tobacco on them. I knew what buttons to push to extend 3 days out of school to 5, just by saying one thing. It's toxic. And it forced me finally in this moment with these two questions. Why does it always have to be about what they do wrong? Why can't it be about what they do right? To reframe who I was, to really take a step back and say, now, wait a minute. Is this really how I want to lead? And for that matter, am I even leading? And I'm simply managing. Our culture was focused on punishment to gain compliance. It's a lousy strategy, by the way. We needed to reframe. And in order to do that, we needed to take a whole different look at how we led our school culture and climate. Over time, we started focusing on the things they did right. We started catching them doing it right instead of catching them doing it wrong. We started to recognize, reward, and reinforce the things that we valued and that we held near and dear. And the more we looked for the positives, the more they started to show up. Now, folks, I'm telling you, this happened a number of years ago, but this is relevant today. Just think about in our society right now. If we focused much, much more on the things that we have in common, about the things that unite us, the things that bring us together, versus the things that divide us and the things that we don't agree on, what an incredible world we would have. But this was my moment to make that shift, to move from catch them doing it wrong to catching them doing it right. And that is that road to awesome. It's really focusing on the positives. It's focusing on what matters and truly impacting people. That's what the road to awesome is all about. During that time, I found myself going and standing on the balcony in our arena. Now, I mentioned earlier that I was a basketball coach. And as a basketball coach, I always went to the tape. You know, when the tape is shot, similar to this picture, up at the top of the arena, where you can look down and you can see everybody who's involved. In football, they call that the all-22 video. In basketball, I called it the balcony video. I wanted to see how well all 5 were meshing and working together. Now, as a leader, It's not too much different from that. I wanted to take a look at what were the things that mattered to me as a leader. I needed to look down from the balcony and check in on myself and hold myself accountable for all of that work. How was I doing? You know, what were the things that were important to me? Now, in my book, Road to Awesome, I actually talk about the 6 things that I felt, and I still feel, were the most important for me, both as a school leader and as a district leader. Things like our vision and our values. Are we clear about what's important to us? We cannot recognize, reward, and reinforce the things that are important to us if we don't know what they are. More importantly than that, if we know what's important to us, do other people? If I came to your school or to your district and I asked you what's important to you, and then I went and asked a bunch of different stakeholders, would they tell me the same thing? Maybe not the same words, but would they give me the same ideas? That's really important to me. Number 2, for me, culture and climate. School culture and climate is so essential. Without great school culture and climate, we're never going to achieve the things we want to achieve. I'm going to talk about culture and climate more in a few minutes. Valuing our educators. Let's be honest, and not just teachers. I say educators over teachers. You know, the phrase I use as a leader is actually staffaldy, staff plus faculty. Don't separate the two, right? Every one of them is just as important, and every one of them has the opportunity to make an impact on a kid. I will tell you my own experience. I don't have that teacher that I look back in my career as a student and say, that's the person. That's the one that made the difference. No, actually, principal secretary and our athletic trainer. Those are the 2 people I connected with the most in my school. They made a difference for me. If we don't include them, you know, they need to know they're equally important. Empowering our students. I'm going to talk about this one a little bit too, but folks, our students are ready to be leaders right now, not somewhere down the road or eventually. Let them be leaders now. Okay, I'm going to talk about that too. Telling the story. It's been said a lot. I say it all the time. If we don't tell the story of our school, somebody else will. We're probably not going to like the version that they tell. We need to take control of the narrative and we need to tell our story. I'll talk a little bit about that too. And then the last one, this is, I think, the most overlooked piece of leadership, but it might be the most important, and that's coaching. Whether that's us coaching our educators, our teachers in the classroom, our folks that are on the operational side in transportation, in maintenance, we need to make sure that we're providing support. And then as leaders, we need to be getting that support. It is so valuable to have that outside eye to come in and share with you what their perspective is. I'll tell you what to do, but just to help you reflect, to essentially help you get on the balcony and take a look at that all 22 tape. Those are the 6 things that I talk about in my book that I think are so critical. But here's the kicker. I don't care if these 6 are important to you. This was what was important to me. In the last chapter of this book, I challenge you to say, okay, here's what's important to me. And that is where we're going to start on the 3 things I think we need to do right now for what's next, right? And that's vision and values. Tell me what it is. And Stephen asked you earlier, get that notebook out. I want you to go to the notebook right now. And I'm even going to give you a minute. I want you to just write down what's important to you. What is it that you value as a leader in the role you're in, whether you're a superintendent, you're in another district leadership position, maybe a curriculum director or a director of special ed, maybe you're a building principal, assistant principal, dean of students, whatever the role. What I'd like you to do is just write down what's important to you. If you struggle with that, maybe then just write your own personal why statement. Why do you do what you do? I won't hammer away on the Simon Sinek work. You all know it. It's brilliant work. But we should know why we do what we do. So I'm going to pause for 1 minute and let you do a little writing. Okay, in these last few seconds, just make sure you're finishing up your thought. I've shared with you what's important to me. Now I'm going to share with you my why statement. For me, the reason I do what I do, the reason honestly that I have left public education to go and help support leaders across North America, to coach and consult with leaders and to speak in events like this and at individual schools, because I want to empower people to take ownership of their story and release the leader that's within. Every one of us has the ability to lead. Every one of us can lead from where we are. Whether we're a paraprofessional, a classroom teacher, a bus driver, maybe we're a cook, a bookkeeper, maintenance person. We all have the ability to lead from where we are. We just have to be willing to release who is that leader. So let's dive in, okay? We've talked a little bit about, we touched on it, our vision and our values, okay? Now we've got an idea. What is it that's important to us? I'm going to talk about two of those things that are important to me as something within vision and values that I think we should be focused on. Right? I mentioned it earlier, coaching. Coaching is so essential. For me, as a first-year high school principal, I told you I was an assistant principal in the same building. I actually had 2 assistant principal roles there. In my second role as the assistant principal, I was in charge of curriculum and instruction. So essentially, if it happened in a classroom and it wasn't discipline related, it was me. It was testing. It was all special ed, all 504, all special programs, career academies, you name it, I had it. I was the instructional leader of my school. When I moved down the hallway 40 feet to my other office, folks, it might as well have been 400 miles. I was not ready to be a principal. We all know this about leadership, that until we step into the role and do the role, we're not ready for it. But I was fortunate that in my second year, we had a new superintendent, and he felt very strongly about coaching. He brought in leadership coaches for all of us. And for me, it completely changed the game. Having somebody who supported me and gave me that third eye perspective. So again, that's what I do now. I'll tell you, I was working with a school in Virginia just last week. And as we're talking about what their focus is for this coming school year, we talked about what is your mission statement as a leadership team? And they said, our team leads with integrity, courage, and purpose. I love this statement. I think it's brilliant, but it's also kind of vague. Yes, we absolutely should lead with those 3 pieces in mind. But how do we be a little bit more intentional about that work? Over the course of 2 days working deeply with this leadership team, ultimately we came with a real clear SMART goal and some real clear action steps. And I think it's important to have that outside perspective from somebody to come in and help us create just exactly what it is that we want to do as a leadership team. When we're talking about vision and values, if we don't have that very clear, here's what we're going to do, we're going to be intentional with, in their case, they're trying to grow more leadership within their school, which is fantastic. So they have very clear action steps around being intentional, meeting with each identified leader in the school to have those conversations. They're being clear, very clear about what it is that they hope to be able to gain with each leader in the school. They're accountable to each other. As a team, they have made agreements around the behaviors that they will have, the steps they will take, the language they will use, so that they are crystal clear about everything related to this goal and to this work. Finally, they're going to be present. They're not going to lead from their office. This is a group that knows very clearly that they cannot simply lead from behind a desk. They need to be out in classrooms. They need to be out with these leaders so they can help them grow. I loved coaching this group, and I'm excited to continue working with them through the course of the year. But if we have that somebody, it doesn't have to be me, but if we have that one person who can give us that third perspective, that's going to help you with the statement you just wrote down to be intentional, to be clear, to be accountable, and to be present with that statement. It's essential that we're doing that. The other piece within vision and values, I'll tell you right now, we have to value our educators. Right now, at least in the United States, we really are faced with a very severe educator shortage, a teacher shortage. Positions are continuing to go unfilled. When we go to job fairs now, job fairs that used to have hundreds and hundreds of candidates have much, much smaller numbers. We have to value the ones we have or we're going to lose them. I'll give you a simple example and maybe even a leadership pro tip here. In my district, the one that I was superintendent, had a policy in place where anybody who wants to take time off additional after a holiday weekend or something along those lines, maybe an extended holiday, the winter break or something, only the superintendent can approve that leave. I received an email 2 school years ago from a teacher, a 5th grade teacher named Amanda. And Amanda had just emailed me and said, "Hey, Darrin, I'd really love to meet with you if I can have some of your time." I emailed Amanda back and said, "Absolutely, happy to meet with you. You tell me when is a good time and I'll come to you." Here's the leadership pro tip. Their time is so much more valuable than yours. Get out of your office and go to them. Do not ask them to come to you. Extreme personnel situations, yes, they need to be handled behind your door. But in a case like this, go to that individual. Before I met with Amanda, I'd actually talked with her principal, and he told me, hey, her husband is going to referee a destination wedding. It's going to be in the Caribbean. She needs to take 1 extra day around Labor Day. I could have very easily emailed Amanda at this point and just said, hey, your principal told me what's going on. Your request is approved. But I didn't. I chose to keep the appointment. I went, sat down, had Amanda tell me the story, and of course, I approved it. But before long, Amanda and I started talking more. You see, I knew that Amanda was struggling that year. I knew that Amanda had 2 of the highest SEL needs students in her entire school, both in her classroom. I asked Amanda, how you doing? She started to tell me. She shared with me stories about these students, about one who every time there's a loud noise, he hides under his desk because it reminds him of the sound of a gunshot when his father killed himself right in front of him. She told me about another student who every time that student is challenged, every time it gets difficult, he runs. Out the door he goes. My wife and daughter will tell you, I'm an easy cry. And it didn't take long, and Amanda and I are both in tears. And I'll keep the rest of my conversation with Amanda between the 2 of us. But as we wrapped up the conversation, we kind of collected ourselves. I looked at Amanda and I said, what can I do to help you? I'll never forget what she said. She said this, just come listen to me. You see, 99% of the people that we label as struggling or resistant or not on board, man, they just want to be heard. Give them your ear. Go listen to them. It's the most important skill as leaders we have. And it's also the skill we have to continue to sharpen all the time. Throw another little leadership pro tip for you. When you're listening, don't listen to respond. Listen to hear them, to actually understand. You see, so often we're listening because we're ready to fire back. We've got the answer. It's our job, right? We're leaders. We solve problems, or we shut down things that aren't good. No, listen to hear them. Don't listen to understand. And that leads me into item number 2 that I really think we need to do now. And that is focus on relationships. Again, we're in the people business. How do we work with people? It's based on this right here, all based on relationships. I'll tell you, I'm going to share this with you in a little bit of a weird way. But when we think about relationships and we think about our schools, I've always felt like we want our schools to be places where everybody feels like they're part of something special. So I'll be honest with you, I'm a Jeep guy. All right, are my Jeep folks out there? I hope so. Put something in the chat so Stephen can tell me later that yes, there were a few Jeep folks, because I want to know that you get this, So if you're a Jeep guy or Jeep gal, and you're driving down the road and you see another Jeep, you throw the Jeep wave. And the other Jeep, they'll throw back the wave. You don't wave at the Ford Escort when it goes by. Probably don't wave at fill in the blank, the Dodge pickup. But boy, Jeep to Jeep, there's the Jeep wave right there every time. It's a Jeep thing. You wouldn't understand if you're not a Jeeper, right? Another thing with Jeeps, this is a little bit of a bizarre thing, but this is something that's actually happening in the Jeep community. Duck, duck, Jeep. Yeah, that's right. As Jeep owners, you keep a bunch of ducks in your vehicle. This is actually the dash of my Jeep right here. This little duck right here, you've been ducked. If you're a Jeeper, you see another Jeep in the parking lot, you go and you set a duck on there. It's called Duck, Duck, Jeep. Hey, if you're not a Jeep person, you don't get it. You think that's weird. If you're a Jeep person, you get it. Why? Because you're part of something special. It's creating this community about feeling like you're part of something special. I'll share you a different way. I am a Wyoming kid. I grew up in Wyoming. My undergrad is from the University of Wyoming. My doctorate's from the University of Wyoming. I was a principal in Wyoming, and my daughter graduated from the University of Wyoming just a few weeks ago. I am Wyoming through and through. It doesn't matter where I travel. Every time I'm in an airport. Just last week, I'm at Dulles in DC, and I saw 3 people wearing University of Wyoming stuff. What do we say when we see each other? Doesn't matter where we are, go Pokes. Because we're part of something special. You want to feel included. And that's what we want to do in our schools, right? Whether it's like the Jeep Wave or it's like the Go Pokes or whatever it is, it's amazing what people will do and the lengths that they'll go when they know that they're valued, when they feel like they're part of something special. So even those little moments, whether it's swag that you have for your school that makes it very unique to be part of that group. We want to create schools where people feel like they're part of something special, and you cannot do that without relationships. So when we talk about this, the word I want to hit on is this last one. And let's talk specifically about our educators. You see, our educators really want to be loved and they really want to be trusted. That's a word you're going to hear as you get ready to start the year, correct? Hey, we need to rebuild trust. Okay? Yeah, it was a hard time. Now let's start focusing on trust. And I would pay this forward also to classroom teachers with your students, the same level of trust that we want to develop with our teachers as leaders. We want our teachers to develop with their kids. Let me share with you a real quick secret of how to go about doing that. Again, something I talk about in the book, but I call it giving them 5. Not a high 5, it's a whole other thing, but give them 5. These 5 things will help you as a leader to develop that trust, to develop that relationship with your educators, regardless their role. We're going to talk a lot as the school year begins about, hey, what were the things that were good during the pandemic, and how do we keep those things? And what were the things that we went away from and we should never bring back? One of the most important things is going to be giving support to teachers to continue to experiment and to grow in those areas. Whether that's around technology, it's around project-based learning, it's blended learning in the classroom, whatever it might be. But if we give them these 5, first, give them some space. We don't need to be in their room every single day. We've got to give them some space so they feel comfortable and empowered to try what it is they're wanting to try. Teachers, same thing with your students. Give them a little space. Let them experiment. Let them try. If it doesn't work, then don't do it anymore. It's fine. It's not a big deal. Give them some space. And then you got to give them some time too, right? We don't create new things overnight. It takes time. So give them a little bit of time. And give them coaching. We talked about coaching. Man, that 3rd point perspective, it's essential. Whether that's you, whether it's an instructional coach or instructional facilitator, whatever you have in your district, it's a peer, somebody to give them some feedback, some non-evaluative descriptive feedback that helps them get better and just continue to grow. Give them praise. If you want people to grow and expand and get better, then you need to recognize, reward, and reinforce that. Not everybody wants praise in front of the staff. Some, it's just a simple pat on the back or a handwritten note. Handwritten notes, another pro tip. man, they go for miles. Handwritten notes are huge. And then give them your ear. I told you earlier, one of the most important skills we have as leaders, we always got to keep sharpening it, is listen. Just listen to what it is they're trying to accomplish. Give them that feedback. But you can't do that until you've actually listened and given them your ear. So again, as we're trying to have folks take off with these new skills and these new tools, give them 5. It'll really help them feel supported. It's going to help them feel trusted and valued. All right. Now, let's switch it over to the student side. You know, here's something that great leaders know. Kids are ready to lead right now. Not eventually, right now. I've had middle school students, elementary school students, and high school students, all who have taken ideas and run with them. An elementary school student in my last district came to us with, hey, I'd love to see an outdoor classroom. He developed the plan. It was part of a 20-time project. There's an outdoor classroom now in that district. Same district, middle school students, hey, we'd like to see a vending machine here. What can we do to make this happen? Hey, here's all the research that you guys need to go do. Take a look into the USDA requirements. Take a look into all of the fire codes and so forth. Start doing some research on different companies that can do this. The 2 middle school students take that and run. Within 6 months, they had the vending machines in there. They were heroes to their fellow students. And as high school students, I've got 1,000 stories there, but I'll tell you about a young lady named Shelby. Shelby came to me one day and said, hey, I saw this project where high school students are filling backpacks with non-perishable foods for kids in need. Can we do this? Run with it. Just so happens that when Shelby was making her pitch to her Health Academy student group, I was leading a tour of some dignitaries around the community. They got to hear her pitch. Before she knew it, she had all the funding she would ever need. Folks, this was 8 or 9 years ago. Shelby now has graduated from college. This project still continues today at Rock Springs High School. And Rock Springs High School students are filling backpacks in the numbers of the 500s for all students who are in need of them every weekend at all of the elementary schools across that district. Your kids are ready to lead now. Let them do it. Let them lead in ways that are impactful on their community. That's the key right there. But understand this, not every kid's ready to lead right now. Some kids need a little bit more support. I'll tell you about a student named Jeremy. So when I was a high school principal, by this point, our school had grown to about 1,400 students. The group that was hardest to get to know by name were the freshmen. You know, at least with sophomores, juniors, seniors, I'd had some time with them. And on any given day, I probably knew between 800 and 900 of them by name. At a pretty high mobility rate, it was tough. But again, the freshmen, until they started getting involved in activities and those things, I struggled to get to know their names. I had to be very intentional about it. Jeremy was not one of those kids. As a freshman, I knew Jeremy's name almost immediately. I did not do discipline and attendance, but obviously had assistant principals who did. Jeremy was frequently in the office. So I knew his name pretty quick. Jeremy was that kid. You've all had him. Jeremy was obscene. Jeremy was foul. He was defiant. He was obstinate. To be honest with you, even his hygiene. Jeremy was hard to be around. And he made it clear to everybody who would listen, and even those who didn't want to, he had no intentions of staying at school. Partway through his freshman year, I noticed Jeremy in the hallway and just called him by name. Jeremy, how you doing today? I was determined I'm going to build a relationship with this kid. You know, this is a challenging kid. I'm going to build a relationship with this kid. I knew my kids well, had a lot of great relationships with kids, and another student named Andy, who was a kid who needed a lot of love and support. He and I had built quite a relationship. And one day I'm in the hallway and I see Andy, and just like every time I saw Andy, it was that bro handshake and the bro hug. Every time I saw Andy from his sophomore year forward, that was how we greeted each other. And I caught Jeremy out of the corner of my eye. He kind of looked like, what is going on there? Hey, Jeremy, how you doing, man? He just looked at me and kept going. During the course of that freshman year, I just continued and continued and continued. Jeremy, what's up, man? What's up? What's up? Finally, late in his freshman year, Jeremy at least gave me a little head nod. He's like, hey, so okay, hey, I'm getting through a little bit, right? Now, I told you, Jeremy really didn't want to be there. To be honest with you, by the end of Jeremy's freshman year, he had passed one class. 0.5 credits this young man has out of a potential 7. Light years behind. Jeremy's in summer school. And while I didn't run summer school, certainly I was in the building and I'd seen Jeremy sitting on a bench, and I stopped, sat down, and just said, Jeremy, what's the plan? What are you going to do? And he said, Pep, I'm going to be honest with you. As soon as I turn 16, I'm dropping out. I have no interest in school. There's nothing here for me. My mom didn't graduate. My dad didn't graduate. My brother didn't graduate. People like me don't graduate from high school. Jeremy, I believe in you, man. I'm not going to give up on you. And he's like, whatever. Sophomore year comes, it's more of the same. And then partway through, there's a little bit of a shift. I'm looking at some data, I'm looking at our grades and taking a look at the list of students who have D's and F's. And I'm going to meet with all of our counselors. We did this on a regular basis. And I noticed a name missing. Jeremy's not on the list. And I went to his counselor. I'm like, did I miss something? Did Jeremy move? I mean, why is he not on the list? And he's like, no, Jeremy's actually got a C in everything. Wow, I got through. No, it wasn't me. Jeremy had actually gotten in trouble, and Jeremy had to spend some time on probation. And a part of the probation was he had to be passing every class with a C or better, or he had to go to the boys' school. And he wanted nothing to do with the boys' school. So Jeremy's passing everything. So now I know, hey, we've got a little bit of leverage here. So now as I see Jeremy in the hallway every time, we're beyond the head nod now. We've got a little knuckle bump going on. I'm like, Jeremy, I believe in you, man. I believe in you. He's like, whatever, Pep, whatever. As soon as I'm off of probation, man, I'm out. Okay. He passes everything in sophomore year. We go into summer school, same conversation. Yep. Pep, when I'm off of probation, man, I'm out. And early in his junior year, I noticed that over maybe a 3 or 4 day period, I hadn't seen Jeremy. And we're in the front hallway. And I asked one of my assistant principals, man, where's Jeremy? What's going on? And the probation agent was standing near us, and she came over and said, I know what's going on. Jeremy's in jail. You see, what we didn't know about Jeremy, and we knew he was obstinate, we knew he was always tired, we knew he was, not interested in school. But what we didn't know was that mom was one of the bigger drug dealers in our community, and she had been using Jeremy and his older brother as kind of the drug mule to go back and forth to a big community or a big city to haul product back. And they had been caught and arrested. So now Jeremy, his brother, and shortly after this, mom are all in jail. The next day, Jeremy comes into school, and he should be, as he comes down the hall, turning right and headed to a science class, but he doesn't. He heads right at me, and it's, Pep, we have to talk now. Cool. Let's have a seat. So he sat down on one of those benches, and he told me the whole story. Told me about how, as the only minor, he was being asked to testify against his mom and his brother. He told me a story about how he had to graduate to stay out of jail, and not only graduate, but graduate on time. I knew how far behind he was. So I said to Jeremy the only thing I could say. I believe in you. I love you. And you're going to be okay. And as Jeremy headed off to class, I went and had a conversation with his counselor, and we both were like, man, this is a tall order. I don't know how we're going to do it, but you know what? We're going to give this kid an opportunity. Jeremy was successful the rest of his junior year, passing his classes. And then his senior year comes, and he's a whole new kid. He's clean. He's got new clothes. His hair is combed. Big smile on his face. The knuckle bump is gone. Now it's the bro hug. Jeremy just is so empowered. And he has this plan. And yes, it's going to require some classes up at the college, and it's going to require some night school, and it's going to require him to take a full boat and just work his tail off, but he's got a plan. We get to almost the very end of the school year. Graduation is right around the corner. There's 2 days left. And on that second to last day, at the end of the day, I saw Jeremy, and I know he's got one assignment left. He's got a big term paper for his English class, his senior English class. I said, hey, Jeremy, that paper, man, it's due at midnight. Don't forget. And he's like, Pep, I got this. All right, it's almost finished. It'll easily be in by midnight. Out the door he goes. The next morning comes. It's the last day for seniors. And we're a few minutes into the day, and up the stairs comes Jeremy. And he's freshman Jeremy again. He is profane. He is obstinate. His hair's a mess. And he's cussing at anybody he can find, including me. Mike, no, buddy. Sit down, let's talk. He went on to tell me about how he had turned in his paper, but he turned it in late. And his English teacher said, sorry, we'll see you in summer school. I told him, just sit tight, buddy. We've been through a lot here. Let me go get the teacher's side of the story. I went down and I asked the teacher, I said, so tell me what happened. And she said the paper was due at midnight. He didn't turn it until 4 a.m. He can go to summer school. But I remember asking that teacher, I said, so tell me what you know about Jeremy's story. I had him as a freshman. He was a slacker. He's a slacker now. He needs to go to summer school. Clearly, he doesn't get it. And I said, well, let me tell you more of Jeremy's story. And I went on to tell her everything I knew about Jeremy, including the phone call I'd gotten that morning from his probation agent, letting me know that mom had been released from jail the night before. She had gone to the foster home and caused one heck of a scene. So Jeremy didn't get the paper in on time. Who cares? Think about what that kid dealt with that night. Through the tears, his teacher said, oh my God, I'll grade the paper. I didn't know. We have to know what's going on with our kids. We've got to build relationships to know what's going on, and she had not done that. Now, she graded the paper, and I think Jeremy got an A. Probably didn't deserve it, but he got an A on the paper, and ultimately he was able to graduate. We started a tradition at that school where, and this came from our students, they asked me, hey, we would like every student to wear a white stole at graduation. We had stoles for different academies, and we had cords and ropes for NHS and CTE and you name it. But we want every kid should have something to adorn their gown. It's called the stoles of gratitude. You see, when the student is given the stole, on the inside of it, they write a message of gratitude in marker, and they wear that stole at graduation. And after graduation is over, they go find the person who they wrote that message to, and they give them that stole. And over the years, I had kids ask, hey, my mom and dad are divorced. Can I have 2, please? Yes, of course you can have 2. I had a grandmother stop me in Walmart one time. Oh my goodness, this is the greatest gift ever, after her granddaughter gave her stole. Every one of those graduation stoles has a story. I have Jeremy's stole. Sometimes we have to believe in kids until they believe in themselves. Jeremy and I are still in contact today. And I see him post incredible inspirational messages all the time on social media. I'm so proud of this young man. Some of our kids are just ready to go. Some of our kids need us to believe in them a whole lot longer until they finally believe in themselves. So when we think about relationships, this is that message. We have to believe in our kids. And I'll tell you what, I'll even take this out and I'll say we need to believe in our educators until they believe in themselves. Because some of them are going to struggle this fall, and we need to continue to believe in them until they believe in themselves. The final of the 3 things that I want to talk about in my remaining time, if I could get this to move, is school culture and climate. Now, you could argue that everything I've talked about already is school culture and climate, and I really, truly believe that this is an absolutely essential element to our leadership. This is the core of the road to awesome, is that culture and climate. You see, when I think about schools, I think about stories like Jeremy, or stories like Shelby, or stories about the 5th grade student named Johnny who built the outdoor classroom. I think about Amanda, the teacher who just needed to be heard Here's the bottom line, folks. When it comes to our culture and our climate, the number one thing to do this fall is to just make sure everybody feels like they are being seen, they are being heard, and they are being loved. If we can do that, all the other stuff's going to take care of itself. We don't need to focus on all this other stuff. Just this. Everybody feels seen, everybody feels heard, and everybody feels loved. That makes them feel like they're part of something special. When I think about school culture, I think about what's really, truly important. And again, this is my opinion. I know test scores are important. We're going to hear we've been hearing about all this learning loss. Oh my God, please stop it with learning loss. Right? We all went through something together. Nobody lost anything, right? Now, from a learning perspective, right? We learned other things. So quit worrying about learning loss, right? I know test scores are important. I talk quite a bit about data at different times as I've gone through, but I'll tell you this, when it comes to schools, I will tell you right now, stories are so much more important than those scores. We really need to focus on the stories because we're in the people business and we cannot forget that. This is an amazing story here that I don't have time to tell you today, but this was the moment right here when I felt that our school culture and climate had changed. An incredible, incredible moment where a fifth-year graduate who had dropped out lifted a special needs student at the very last second of the staff versus seniors basketball game to score the winning basket. Great story. Don't have the time to tell the entire thing. My challenge for you is you need to tell your story. You know, I said it earlier, if we don't tell our story, somebody else will, and we probably won't like the version they tell. We've had a lot of people trying to tell our stories this last year or so. Now it's time for us to take control of the narrative, and the focus on that narrative needs to be on the positives. You know, let's focus on what they do right, not what they do wrong. You know, our buddy George Couros says it so very well that we need to make the positive so loud that the negative becomes almost impossible to hear. Every time I've had a chance to listen to George talk, I hear him say this, and it just resonates so strong. I'll tell you that I was a dance dad, and I know that maybe sounds a little bit weird, but in first grade, my daughter decided, hey, I want to take dance classes. So we put her in dance classes. And by second grade, we were traveling all over the Western United States to all these dance competitions. Well, they happen at schools. So I got to go around and, hey, what's happening in this school? What's happening in that school? It's an interesting thing when you're a visitor in somebody's school. You learn what's important to them because your school tells a story just as much as all the social media stuff. Matt Joseph is going to get into the PLN and social media, so I'm not going to hit that part, but I'm going to tell you that your school itself tells a story. Partway through this dance dad thing, I took my staff on a PD day to our front door. Those front doors you saw at the very beginning of my presentation. And I said, all right, here's the deal. Walk down this hallway. I want you to take note of everything that you see. When we get to the end of the hallway, I'm going to ask you, what does our building tell visitors? What's the story we're telling? Well, folks, this is what our hallways look like. What story were we telling? We got to the end of that hallway, and one of the teachers said, well, we clearly love our sports trophies. Again, I was a head coach actually in 2 sports. I love sports. I think they are huge. They are one of the most important pieces of our hidden curriculum. But if that's the only thing that our school, my school, was telling people we value, we got a problem. I mean, schools are built for education, not just for sports. So what were we doing? I started to pay even more attention, and I noticed that our kids just sat on the floor. Yeah, there wasn't even a place for our kids to sit down other than in the cafeteria and in classrooms. They just sat on the floor in the mornings. Kidding me? Nah, we needed to be better. We needed to, if we wanted to act like adults, let's treat them like adults. So you know what we did? Hey, we built benches. We built benches for the entire building. 325,000 square foot building, and it's almost impossible to find a place without a bench. I remember teachers asking me when they first saw the benches, hey, what if the kids vandalize them? Again, as we were still working our way through our culture. My response was, what if they don't? Guess what? They didn't. Okay. Then I had students say, hey, I'd like to paint some murals. Young lady named Allie painted this one. It's the very first student mural I had done. One day your life will flash before your eyes. Make sure it's worth watching. So right at the end of that main hallway. Amazing, amazing quote. But we didn't stop there. How do we do more? Hey, how do we let our kids know that we value them? Let's let others know we value them. So right inside the main doors, we painted this mural. This is how we see our kids when they're not at school. You know, let's value them for who they are. They love BMX. They love hockey. It's huge in that community. So is boxing. You see boxing way down at the far end. This is who our kids are. We wanted them to be committed to graduation. And so, hey, every day it's right there in front of you. We wanted them to act appropriately and not to bully each other. So we built this one. I got to paint this quote. No one can make you feel inferior without your consent. Eleanor Roosevelt, one of my favorite quotes. The entire building was covered with this. All of a sudden, our building told a story. And it was a powerful story about what we really valued, what was important to us. And our community loved it. So let me say this about culture and climate, because my time is running very, very short. Before you add to their plate this coming fall, as school leaders, it's going to be very tempting. Okay, we need to do more of this. We need to do more work on blended learning. We need to do more work on how do we best integrate this strategy. We need to do more work on fill in the blank. Before you put anything more on their plate, get on the balcony and think about your culture and climate. Think about coaching, thinking about how you're empowering your students. Think about, what am I doing to value my educators? Think about what you value. Get up on that balcony, because here's the reality. No program, no curriculum, no initiative is going to reach its peak benefit without a culture and climate where everybody feels like they're part of something special. Told you I want to get you on the road to awesome, get your leadership on the road to awesome. Well, for me, two roads diverged in one moment. I took the road to awesome. I have a really good friend named Bradley Skinner, and he loves to say this. Bradley was a teacher in my building for a number of years before we both went separate directions. Bradley says all the time, it's okay to pick up hitchhikers on the road to awesome. I'd love to have you join me on the road to awesome. If you want to connect with me, you want to talk to me about anything that you heard here, maybe you want to have me come and speak in your district or with your school, maybe even do some coaching with you, whatever it is. There it is right there. 2 websites. There's my cell phone number. It's my personal cell phone number. Do not hesitate to reach out. That's my email. Hit me on Twitter. I'm Darrin Peppard on all of the socials. And there we go. Thank you so much. I have one final thing, Stephen, before we wrap up. I want to say this. We have just been through an unbelievably challenging time. And I know you don't hear it very often, especially as leaders, because I know I didn't hear it very much. But let me say thank you. Thank you for everything that you are doing on behalf of your staff and on behalf of your kids. You see, I'm not just an educator, I'm a father. And my daughter had an amazing, amazing educational experience because of people just like you. So on behalf of all educators, on behalf of the people in your community and every other community, thank you, thank you, thank you for what you do. You matter. I'm Dr. Darrin Peppard. I appreciate your time.
But this question comes from actually New York State, from Diane, who is asking if your leader now could talk to your younger version of you as a leader when you had that master's degree in your hand. You started out as an AP. What's one piece of advice that you would give that you could leave us with?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, and I think the thing that I would say to myself as rookie leader 15 years ago is it's not about you. It is all about them. You know, we're told all the time about servant leadership, but really it's about people. And I know that came through a lot in the presentation, but I would go back and tell myself, you know, hey, quit worrying about being the smartest person in the room or feeling like you have to have all the answers. The smartest person in the room is the room. And the more you listen and the less you talk, the better a leader you're going to be.
Right. Absolutely. I agree with that. Absolutely. Thumbs up. Thank you again, Darrin, so much for joining us today. definitely stick with us and join us with the other presenters, and join us again for the Kahoot at the end of the prizes.